That's what I'm talking about, son. Get you some of that daggone pie.
Woo-hoo! Looky there. There's your bug-eyed big one right there.
Getting started. We're getting started.
Here's what I'm talking about. Gosh dang gorilla.
Let's go, baby. Straight meat. God, look at that big one.
All right, everybody, welcome into the show. I'm your host, Big Ed, and this is the BAM Pod. And on today, we have Len Vinci, and he is going to be talking to you a little bit about Forward Facing Sonar. That's one of the biggest topics on the going out there right now, and everybody's been asking about it. So I thought, you know what? Let's bring in one of the experts and let's have him talk about a little bit about this stuff. And Len, so thanks for coming on, man. I know you're out driving around.
Hey, Ed, thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah, everybody's talking about, forward facing sonar. Every interview I do, guys are talking about how important it is and everything like that. But what most people don't really understand is, I guess, the ins and outs of it, the do's and don'ts and how to set it up, how to kind of work it. Now, it's probably going to take some kind of a seminar or some kind of a real thing to really get into the nitty gritty of it all. But I'd love to hear some of your thoughts and how to set that thing up by, if you're doing it by yourself and all that. So what do you got?
Well, I would tell you, and you mentioned about a seminar, and I do classes throughout Northern California through the Sportsman's University series, and it works really good. And with COVID, we had to shut those down, but now they're firing them back up, and numerous locations with that, and that really gives users a good hands-on idea how to set things up and how to work things through with Mega Live and the others that are out there. And so I would tell everyone also too, outside of this podcast, to look for those seminars out there because they're free and they're a great advantage. But going back to where technology has come a long ways in marine sonar. And as you had said, one of the things that's a big focal point in marine sonar now is forward scan or live. Mm-hmm. And, depending on what flavor it might be, me being the factory guy for Humminbird, we call that Mega Live. And the whole premise to that is getting the idea of being able to see fish in their live state. Even though that we have other different technologies such as side imaging and down imaging and others call it side scan and down scan, whatever it might be, it's just another tool in the box. And depending on what you do and how you do it, whether you are a crappie fisherman, pan fisherman, bass fisherman, striper, live scan especially has its advantages. Some people say that live scan is more towards your schooling species, and I could see that. I could see that, like down in the south where a crappie is a real big thing. Live technology is really taken off to a whole other different level. And so it's really up to on you on what you're trying to get out of your electronics, what you want to achieve. And then when you look at live, then you can see what it can do for you. But in the meantime, out here, let's talk about what its advantages are. Okay. Like I said, about being able to see fish live, right? Being able to see a species, say whether it's a largemouth, smallmouth, spotted bass, crappie, whatever it might be, see them live in the water column, see them moving around, see them shaking around structure and all that. But one of the key advantages to live technology is being able to see your lure in conjunction to the fish. Mm-hmm. This is the biggest advantage that you see on MLF and BASS and all the other major national tournament circuits, as well as our tournaments out west, because tournament anglers now have the ability to see the character of the fish on that day. Meaning is that every day, and that a fish's character changes, whether if it is all these variables from water temperature to depth to clarity to weather conditions, et cetera, et cetera. And so every day can be very different for how a fish reacts to a lure. And so live allows you to be able to really get a better idea of how they're responding to a lure's action, a lure in itself, color, all those kind of things. Maybe just in depth. Maybe you are just not reaching the fish that you find the school in 15 feet of water, but your crankbait's at 10. Right. You had no idea that you were really not reaching them until you see that. Or the lure is going right through the school, but you can see the school is just not reacting to it. And how live is, it gives you that ability to see how the fish species react to the lure. It's downright awesome. So when you think about that, like we do and like we talk about in our seminars, is one of the things that's extremely important is resolution and detail on your screen. And so this is probably one of the most important technologies to match with your live scan. And in live scan, you want the most crisp, most clean, most detailed imaging that you possibly can get to get that. Now, granted, we all know that some of these electronics, for example, you can get electronics out there that are $4,000 for each screen. And a lot of guys just don't have that kind of budget, man. And I get it. Then you also run into the guys, Ed, that you and I both know that can have 6 Solexes on their boat, or how many HDS screens on their boat, and it's just like loaded with electronics. It's like $15,000 worth of screens, and that's how people are. But it's one thing that if you walk away from today, remember that if you can match your live imaging with great detail on a screen, that would be outstanding. For Humminbird, for example, it would be Apex. Apex is, detail you're looking at 1920 by a little over 1,000. Solex is a little bit less than that at 1280 by 800, and the Helix is a little over 1,000 by 600. So you see some variances there in detail and resolution. So, but the ultimate for the Humminbird family would be Apex. Okay. For Lowrance and for Garmin, same kind of thing. You want the highest resolution available to get the advantages of that. Okay. One of the things that you have to really look about too is and I've been with Johnson Outdoors 25 years now. Yeah. Yeah. Can I rig a boat? Yeah. A lot of guys that I know, I run into the shows, and all the time they'll come into the booth. Hey, Len, how do you do this? How do you do that? I still tell you, I go to the professionals that do this stuff, that rig this stuff day in and day out. And there's some outstanding ones out there that really know their stuff. And what I mean by that is that if there's one mistake made in the rigging process, you're sitting there cussing and fighting and throwing and doing all this stuff. And you and I both know that, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
You're going to stuff all over the boat. And yet, if you didn't rig something right, you didn't ground right, you didn't position it right, something's not going to work correctly, and you're thinking it's something else. But what I highly recommend, if you have the ability, is to have a professional be able to rig, especially in live. And when you go to your local dealer, let's say, for example, it's Gone Fishing Marine or it's CNC Marine up here in Northern Cal, you ask them, hey, have you guys do any rigging in live scan, forward scan? They'll say, yeah, or they might say, no, we've really never done that before. And then you move on. Right. But like example, those two particular dealers, they do a lot of work with that kind of thing in all different flavors. Meaning is that all different brands. Right. You'll find that this is going to be an important part, making sure your equipment works very well. I cannot tell you, Ed, how many times I run into guys that rig it themselves, that all of a sudden something's not working very well, and then they think it's the unit. And so this is an important part that you go back to and go, okay, I got to think of this, I got to consider this. One of the things that once you have established the rig, Ed, you got a question?
No, I'm okay. Constantly in that phase where people are, I hear them saying that same thing. It's like, God, I bought this thing, I thought it would be so much better. I mean, I found one the other day and I looked at it and I go, well, you can't see. What do you mean you can't see anything? Well, I can't see anything. Okay. So I look at it, I go, your puck is facing your motor. So you really ought to, you really ought to have that thing turned around.
Yeah.
Little things like that.
It happens to everyone. It happens to, but like I said, these are the simple parts. This is that foundational work that you do before you start thinking of all the other setups and all different things getting out of the water. Make sure it is rigged on your boat correctly. And once it is, then you can go to the next stage. And once it's done like that, then we start talking about, okay, so you've got the right screen to match with it. Then you've gotten it rigged up correctly on your Ultrex, for example. Let's say, again, for comparison's purposes, let's talk about Ultrex. Ultrex motors, that is the one that is compatible with Mega Live. Now, granted, there are guys out there, and it's worth the conversation today, that will people do live on other different ways? Sure, everyone will be the MacGyver of the world. I just dated myself, Ed, but hopefully everyone knows who MacGyver is. Is that you can put live on sticks. They'll put them down on other different means of getting live in your water, but you also find there are disadvantages to that, and one of those is being noise and interference.
Right.
And so the main configuration is rigging live, Mega Live, on the shaft of your Ultrex. You have a couple different ways of being able to set that up. You have it in a forward mode, you have it in a down mode, and you have it in a landscape mode. And this is fairly common with all the brands. Okay. So in our case, like the most popular mode to be in would be in forward. This gives you the ability to see your bait and see fish out in front of the boat, being able to see your lure once you've casted it out, and look at it coming into the boat. But once again, the farther that's out, resolution becomes an issue more and more with different units. And so that's why to have that crisp, detailed unit is going to be extremely important. The other people call me all the time. I get calls weekly. What mode do I put it on? I tell them forward. Could you put it on landscape? Yeah. Landscape gives you that 180-degree landscape view to the front. I use that mode in the springtime when I'm sight fishing, and it gives me the ability to see bedfish out in front of me, and so that's what I'm looking at. And it's kind of a cool thing, especially in water that's a little churn. Maybe you can't see your bedfish, but you know that they're there. So landscape view gives you that cool ability to be able to see that. It's really cool. And then down is for the guys that are looking straight down. Maybe they're vertical jigging on a school of crappie or whatever it might be. Maybe even a school of striper that's deeper than the norm than what we see out here. The down view of that. But most people that are using live technology, they're using it as forward. One of the things you want to make sure.
Well, let me ask you this real quick about that, because I think it's going to get asked, is when you're doing that, is there any physical any physical thing that you have to do to change those settings, or is it all in the computer? Or is it all in the unit, all in the computer? You just, once you have your thing set up.
So what you want to do physically to the actual transducer itself, once it is mounted on that bottom end of the shaft of your Ultrex, you want the facing of the transducer straight down. So meaning it'd be parallel or straight with the shaft itself. So it's aiming straight down towards your transducer on your motor. Okay. Then what you're going to do is you're going to give it 6 clicks. You'll hear it click. You'll put your palm over the transducer, the live transducer, and click it up. Meaning is that you'll turn it 6 clicks up, and that will give you 60 degrees. That is your common there like that. Even though like on Mega Live, you'll see these notches underneath there that are kind of like they're a grid to be able to see that, and it'll be an F on there, and there'll be an L for landscape and D for down. But 6 clicks up from straight down is really what you want for your ideal 60-degree forward scan. Okay. And you could do that. That is really the only physical thing outside of changing the transducer to landscape, which you would do that as well. And there's a small little silver button on the bottom of your transducer too that you push, and then the transducer actually pops, and it'll create that landscape view. And that's the only other thing outside of making a change in your electronics. Okay. Once you have made that 6 clicks up from straight down up like that, you want to go into, once you are on the Mega Live site of your electronics, you want to make sure that you're in 60-degree display. You want to make sure that the mode does say forward. And this is once you press your menu once, that will get you into, and this is what we do a lot in our classes, but as long as you're on the live screen itself, you press menu once. Whether you are in an Apex, whether you are on a Solex or a Helix, you press that once, it gives you those settings. So make sure you're at 60 degrees. The other one is sensitivity, and this one plays a huge part, not only in 2D sonar and side scan and down scan, but also in this. You want to be between 12 and 14. depending on the depth of the water. And this is a rule that we use in sonars, is that the deeper the water, the more the sensitivity, the shallower, the less, because you're going to get kickback, and then it's going to get clutter onto the screen. So you want to make sure you're at between 12 and 14.
We have a process that we call simple price, simple process. And what that means is we take our lowest and best price and we post it on every single car. There's no back and forth. And by simple process, what that means is when you meet somebody, they can handle every aspect of what you do in your car transaction buying experience from beginning to end.
We call it contrast or / dynamic contrast. This is contrast crisping up the screen, getting rid of some elements that are in the screen that you want to get rid of, and that should be at 1. And then when you look at forward range, this is important too, because on the average, just like in side imaging, and I have a lot of my students that come to class, hey Len, what do you do your side imaging range at? I typically have mine between 80 and 110 out to the side.
Oh, okay.
For side imaging. For Mega Live, my range is right at 100 feet. Now, what happens if I am at the bank and I'm only at 50 feet away from the bank? Then what should I do? I make the adjustment to 50 feet. It shouldn't take you more than a millisecond to make that adjustment. But as a whole, if I'm in open water and I'm doing that, I want my forward range at 100 feet.
Okay.
Last but not least, as far as your adjustments, is your down range. Your down range really is in conjunction to the angle that your transducer is at, those 6 clicks they get you. It should be at 45 degrees. Maybe some guys have it at 50 degrees. That's right about in that sweet spot of where you need to be.
Okay.
The other thing that people do not even realize, most of it's crazy, because then they start to see, oh man, Len, this is cool. I got this, but I'm seeing these halos, these like the sound waves that are on my screen that are like pulsating. And in the world of marine electronics, and and people that know me that go to my classes, I get guys that are running Lowrance, they can run Garmin. I got Furuno guys. They all come to my classes.
Right.
But there are some principles and things that go on in marine electronics, and one is being noise and interference, that they all do, right? They all sense some type of that like that. And so when you see that on your screen, you have some kind of disturbance or interference. And one of those things on Mega Live, for example, could be surface interference. That means is that signal is bouncing to the surface of the water and kicking back to you. And what we have in the box of your Mega Live is what they call a mask. And this little material, it looks like a rubbery neoprene style piece of material that you'll fit over. And you can go online and look at it. You can go Mega Live mask. And this is something that you put on the top portion of the transducer element. It's hard to show you over the phone like this, but you will put this mask on the top, especially if you're in forward mode. And that eliminates and decreases those sound wave interference images that you're going to be seeing on the screen. Most people don't even realize that exists that way. But one thing you don't ever want to do is back off your sensitivity to get rid of those, because you want a hot screen. And so putting that mask on that one top portion of your Mega Live transducer is going to get rid of, or at least decrease significantly, those sound wave images that you're seeing on the screen.
See, and I just thought that was Aquaman talking to the fish. That's dating myself.
Yeah. Hey, dude, you know, he was my favorite super friend. He was awesome. You know me, I'm a father of 5 boys, and they always ask me about what my super friend guy was, and they know that Dad's a fish guy and a water guy, and Aquaman was the deal. He was the deal. I loved him.
Yeah,
that was like, how old is Aquaman? I mean, shit, he had side imaging, down imaging, and Mega Live naturally built in, right?
Right. I'm telling you, man, I think we're doing this wrong.
Oh yeah. So when it comes to this, these are your basic, but yet advanced settings that the user that is listening today can take advantage of and use, and it's a great start. Now, are there some tweaks? Yes. you want to be in, obviously, and you want to be in a manual mode, and that's what these modes are in, is the manual mode. So you can
Okay.
make adjustments depending on your depth and depending on your distance. A lot of times, like I said, I can be in sight fishing in the spring, and if I'm 50 feet away from those beds that are right up against the bank, and I've got my range at 100 feet, you're not going to get the images that you want out of it. You're going to get kickbacks. The same thing with side imaging. You'll wonder why your screen is all black and your image is small. And so you got to make sure you take the time to make those little minor adjustments. One of the other things.
I think that's really important to, that people, you say that, because a lot of guys, they pick up their machines, they pick up their stuff, they put it on and they go, okay, I'm going to put this in auto. It'll just do it all itself, and I especially guys who don't know that much about them, so saying, hey, this needs to be in manual. When you do this, make sure everything you're setting up is in manual. So that's very important.
Super important. But we all know, that, and again, I run into thousands and thousands of guys that come to our classes, stream at the shows, that marine electronics can be a little intimidating. And thank goodness that manufacturers such as Humminbird and others that are trying to make these units and these machines simpler to use, because really the easier it is, the less complex it is to use, the better. And that's why at our classes we teach we teach less button pushing, more fishing. And yet guys like Ott Defoe and Kevin Van Dam and Chris Zaldane and Brandon Polinick, I've done videos with those guys. We've all been in a lot of lecture and talk together about things about advantages and disadvantages to modern marine electronics. And the one thing they all say is make it less complex, but make it high tech, right? So that's what you want. And that's why these things out there in live sonar is become a big thing, but yet you want it to be easy. You do not want to be flustered out on the water. You want to be able to turn your unit on, make minor adjustments, and go catch fish, right?
Right.
One thing I also want to mention to you, and this is another one that talk about intimidating, is software upgrades. Software can be a menace to people because it's intimidating, right? Man, I don't want to do that. I just want to turn my unit on, right? I just want to plug that in and let it rip, right?
Yep.
And so that's another one that companies such as Humminbird are trying to make it easier and easier and easier to do. And so, for example, with Mega Live, you have to make sure that your units are on the right software. Your main unit, again, whether if it's Apex, Solex, or Helix, this also pertains to Lowrance and Garmin, is that make sure you are updated with the right software that works coexisting with your live sonar. In Humminbird, for example, there's a certain part of your screen that you can determine what part of your screen tells you what software it is. You might all of a sudden be on 3.98 on your main screen, but your Mega Live might not only be running on 4.07. And so you're going, oh my gosh, you're calling me, you're getting mad at the store who you bought it from, and little do you know, you just aren't on the right software for that. And so it is fairly easy to do. Number one, make sure you're on the right software. And a lot of times you can find that out through your dealer as well. A lot of dealers will help you determine that, or you can go online, for example, to humminbird.com, put your unit in there, and you'll see exactly what that is. The other one, too, is that Mega Live has its own software, too. We first were at 1.15, and now our latest software change is 1.17, and that's a huge change. That change gives you a change in resolution to your lure and gets you more range. So we were comfortable out to 50, 60 feet. Now you're at 100 feet, and your resolution and detail is significantly better. So,
and the important part about you saying that right there for everybody is that you don't have to go, it's like, oh, well, now you can see out to 50, you can see out to 100 feet. Okay, cool. So do I have to go buy a whole new unit? Do I have to go buy a new trolling motor? Do I have to go buy, no, you just have to update your software. Make sure you update your software and keep it up to date, right? Because they're always going to be coming new. Everything's going to be done. You don't have to buy all the new units. Just take the time.
Yeah. For example, I'll make a great example again, whether you call Mark down at Gone Fishing or you call Johnny Mays up at CNC Marine. And there's so many dealers out there, Tanner down at Boatmasters. You can call them up and say, hey, Johnny, what is the current software? And these guys will tell you. They'll let you know.
Right.
If you're not having that ability to get online or whatever it is to look at it, these guys, Mark and his crew down there, Gone Fishing, same thing. They'll tell you exactly, hey, yeah, you need to be on this software. It's not going to work unless you do it that way. And so that's the benefit of dealing with great dealers such as those guys. They're awesome.
Okay.
Last but not least, I'll tell you is the other thing that is in conjunction. You guys have probably heard about it. It's called Target Lock. Target Lock is something that was released out at the National ICAST show in Orlando this summer. And Target Lock allows you to steer your electric motor and steer your Mega Live independently from each other. You'll find out that that is a huge advantage, being able to steer that motor, have it in spot lock, and still be able to steer your Mega Live. It is on a shaft that goes parallel to your electric motor. It runs independently. It's on a motor actuator, and it moves independently from that. It is controlled through your Humminbird unit, a hand control, as well as a foot control. The other advantage to Target Lock, it allows you to lock onto a piece of target or a structure and be able to stay on it, and it locks on it. So maybe you found a bush that is 40 feet away from you. Maybe you're in the rock gardens over at Folsom. I'll make that an example. And you found this rock pile that's 40 feet away, and this big school of spotted bass that are sitting there swimming all around on it. You can lock your Mega Live right to that piece of structure, that rock pile, and you can move around it on spot lock. You can move your electric motor, and your Mega Live stays right on that structure. It's super cool. I mean, it's really innovative. It won Best of Show at ICAST. Pretty neat. The other one too is that it allows you to do what they call a 120-degree sweep, and it'll sweep 120 degrees going into a bay, and then it allows you to be able to see schools of fish. So you can go into this bay, maybe it's like, 50 yards by 50 yards, and you're like, man, I'm looking for bait fish, I'm looking for schools of fish. You can go in there and sweep, and you can be turning your electric motor, and that thing's still sweeping 120 degrees, and then you find them. That's what these pros are doing. This is what allows them to be efficient with their time going into these spots, because they know they go into a spot and they look under a dock or they look under this or that, and they don't see fish or they don't see active fish, they're out.
Yeah.
And that is what makes them that much more efficient. Right. So yeah, the Target Lock on that is great. You can also use that in conjunction with 362. We have a bracket for all those. Seems like a lot of stuff on the bow of your boat. But it is a lot. But there are also some new lift assists for your Ultrex motors, as well as new Ultrex that have a new lift assist to handle that kind of weight on the front. But once again, another tool in the box for the fishermen to be able to get an advantage out on the water.
Thanks for all that information. I hope guys rewind this and listen many times, because there's a lot of good information in there. And there's, again, there's classes out there. Well, how do they find the classes real quick?
You can go on to futurepro.com. You can actually call the dealers. You can go down, like, for example, Mark at Gone Fishing Marine and Alan down and Tim Hall down at Fisherman's Warehouse, Sacramento. They will tell you, hey, when is Len Vinci from Humminbird doing his next electronics class? And they will give you that. Also, at the upcoming ISC show in January, we'll have our schedule for the whole year, and you'll be able to sign up on there and make sure that you have a reserved seat for it.
And you still do the private home shows, right, for $40,000 a show?
I cannot tell you, Ed, how many people ask me, hey, Len, how can I hire you to take me out? And I'm telling you, there's so many guys that want to do that. But for the meantime, right now, the classes are great. Thank you from me to you for being able to bring this to our users and our fishermen out there too, because social media and podcasts are outstanding pieces of information to get that out there to make your fishing experience better.
Well, thanks for coming on, Len. I know you got to get going. We really appreciate your time. We really appreciate all your information, man. You're always a wealth. So hope we'll have you back on again sometime, and we'll talk to you soon, buddy. Thank you.
Thanks again for having me, man. Take care.
All right. All right, guys. So that was Len Vinci with Humminbird, Johnson Marine, or Johnson Outdoors. And the next segment, we're going to have Mark Lassagne coming on here. He's going to talk about some of the Garmin stuff, some of the ways to set those things up, a lot of the information that he gave. So stand by, keep listening, and hope you like the next part of this. And let's get into it.
Bass U, folks. Information is pouring over. If you want to learn more about every lake, how to fish, shallow, deep, in between, skipping docks and rocks and cranking, slow wiggling, chatter, smattering, you get it at Bass U. We got the best of the best. If somebody's ever caught a bass on something and perfected the technique, we got you covered. Get on Bass U TV, check it out, sign up, be a member, be part of it, folks. Keep learning. I'm Gerald Swindle. Subscribe to Bass U.
All right, guys. This is going to be this is our second part of our episode, and on the line now we have Mark Lassagne, who's the owner of the Bass Angler magazine, and he's a Garmin staff guy, and he's going to talk to you a little bit more about the Garmin units with the Forward Facing Sonar and how to set those up. So, Mark, thanks for coming in, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, thank you for having me. I love the live scope, since it was a big giant brick, on the front of your trolling motor. I've had them since they first came out. So really, really cool technology.
When we just talked about the first part of this show was with Len Vinci, and leading into now, we're talking about somebody who, Len's a fisherman. He's out there once in a while, but you're a fisherman on the water, and you're really seeing how these things work and how much they've improved your fishing and how much you can do that. And there's a lot of guys out there, a lot of people out there. I don't want to, just say guys, but there's a lot of people out there that are, getting into the forward facing sonar. They're getting into these new units, and they'd really love to know. It's like, man, there's all these so many intricate parts and details. As a guy who uses them a lot, tell us a little bit about some of the ways you first start setting it up, or the things you really want to make a point of when you're installing this unit.
I have to tell you, Garmin is kind of like an iPhone. I think it's very user friendly, and if you're brand new to it, you can basically plug all the components in, turn it on, and start using it without setting up anything. You just turn it on live scope and you can start using it. Obviously, there's settings on every piece of equipment out there that will enhance it and make it better. But the nice thing about it, when I started using it, I basically turn it on and I go out and start using it, and I go, oh, that's a little fuzzy, or that I don't see in that fish, so I make a little adjustment here, a little adjustment there. So we can kind of go over some of the things, some of the basic things for it. For my Garmin's, all my electronics, I use a separate battery for them. Okay. I currently use a 16 volt battery. You don't have to use a 16 volt. You can use a 12 volt. But the cool thing about having a dedicated battery is that there's no live well interference. There's no other interference from anything else. Just that one battery is feeding electricity to your electronics. So it makes for a little cleaner, clearer picture. Obviously I know that everybody can't just go out and buy an extra battery just to run their electronics, but if you can, it'll make up for a cleaner picture. Something else that I do is that I'll adjust two simple things. I'll adjust the forward distance out based upon where I'm fishing. Okay, a lot of people will go, oh, just put it in one spot and then leave it there, and then you get used to that. But that's not always the case. If you're out on Oroville or Shasta throwing an A-rig, you may be throwing that A-rig out 80, 90, 100 feet if you're a good caster. And you want to be able to see that thing out there and see it coming back and watch to see if any fish are hitting it. So on a lake like that, you may adjust it out to where it's 100 feet. Now, on the flip side, you go to Clear Lake and you're fishing up underneath docks. Well, the docks, you're only 20, 30 feet away from these docks. So you may set it at 30 or 40 feet. And what that'll do is that, so the closer you make it, the more things you can see on your screen. the closer in it is. You know, it's kind of like putting something closer up to your face where you can see it a lot better. You know, you go to Clear Lake and these fish will be aloft on these docks, and you can go in there. If you have it set out at 100 feet, they're going to be really small and hard to see. When you back that thing up to like 40 feet, now you can see these fish. They're like a glowing dot underneath the dock, and you can tell, oh, there's a fish right there under the dock. He's on the third pole back behind there, and you can tell exactly, you know, where they are. So, you know, the cool thing about forward-facing sonar is that it's really changed, you know, the way you fish. So you can see so many things. And the second thing is the gain. So I have, you know, you have on the Garmin unit, you can set it up where you have the controls right on top of your screen. And you'll have the forward distance, the depth, the gain on there, right there. So you can set that forward distance, say you're at 40 feet. And now if you have your gain turned way down, you won't see the fish either. So you'll want to bump that gain up to where you can start seeing things. I usually bump it up to where things are a little bit fuzzy. You know, you're seeing a little bit more than you would if it was on automatic. Once you flip it on automatic, it filters out a lot of the like sediment and things. So, and sometimes it'll maybe even filter out some of the fish. So I usually crank it up just a little bit. Okay, but like I was saying a minute ago, I mean, you can turn it on automatic and look at it.
So now is that kind of the way you've described this is a little bit different than a traditional, like a traditional fish finder that we all think of, like, you know, it's got the cone and that sort of thing. So as the cone gets bigger, you get less, you know, you're seeing more, but you're not seeing as, I guess, detailed. So with this forward facing sonar, the way you're describing it is if you're putting it in and it's, you know, 100 feet, are you still seeing, is it more like a spotlight or is it more of an open, bigger cone the further you get out?
Well, the cone is a 20-degree cone.
Okay.
So if you're to take like a traffic cone and put that out there, that's probably a little bit more than 20 degrees. But if you put that out there and looked at it, yes, when you get out to 100 feet further out, it's out a lot further. And when you zoom it in, yes, it's a lot closer.
Okay, so the closer you get it, the more precise you're seeing.
Yes.
Okay.
And you know, one of the settings I use on mine, and some guys like it, some guys don't, but I use the grids. Okay, there's grids, and the grids are 5 feet. Okay, so when I look at the grid, and so as you zoom it in, you know, make the distance, your forward distance less, those grids get bigger. So it's easier to tell, you know, if you look and you see a fish that is almost half of a grid, you go, wow, that's a pretty good one, you know. Yeah. And if you see like a little dot, you go, that's probably a little teeny one. You know, you may or may not want to fish for them. You want to catch a little one, that's cool. But if you're looking for bigger ones, then you're going to look for those bigger dots.
Okay. So then you started talking about your gain and getting a little bit, you know, it's okay to not use the auto. So is the auto, you know, would you use the auto on a regular basis, or do you turn it off and just go, nope, I do this manually and this is how I set it up?
A lot of times when I hit the lake, it'll be on auto.
Okay.
And I will look and see how it looks. You know, if it looks crisp and clear and I can see my bait going down, you know, if you throw a drop shot out 30 feet in front of the boat and you can see the bait and the weight going down, then, you know, your game's pretty good and you could tell what's going on. So I may just leave it on auto. If I can't see that, then I'll bump it up a little bit.
Okay. That's kind of what I was wondering. I mean, is it one of those things that you're just like, you know what, auto's not really showing me anything. I need to adjust it to be, you know, because you can go down to Berryessa sometimes and, you know, there's a whole school of fish there, you know, on a point or something like that, and you're throwing your bait out there, but you're not really seeing your bait. Is that when you kind of switch over to, you know, more of a manual control?
Yes. And it's, you know, on the Garmin, it's really easy. It's a little button right there on the screen, and all I have to do is hit the plus plus sign a couple times, and it bumps it right up. So let's talk about a couple of other settings, and then we can talk about looking at fish or looking at brush piles and a lot of other things that this unit really shines about.
Okay.
So you have your gain. You can put that on auto, or a lot of times I'll run it like 70 to around 70%, maybe a little bit higher. Color gain, also you can run that on. It's called default, but it's auto. Run that around 50 to 60%. Color limit. Now these are is that when you're on the live scope unit itself, you're looking at the live scope, you'll hit menu, and then you'll go to menu, and then you'll go into appearance, and then it'll give you these other items that you can adjust.
Okay.
So one is color gain. So I usually run that 50 to 60%. Sometimes I'll run it on default. Sometimes when I get to the lake, I'll run everything on default and see how it is. If I'm not seeing the bottom real well, or I'm not seeing fish real well, then I'll start making adjustments to where I can see it better. So color gain 50 to 60, color limit 40 to 60, reverse range. Okay, what that reverse range is that when you look at the live scope, there's going to be a 0 on your screen, and that 0 is the trolling motor. And if you can run it a couple of ways, there's like a low, medium, and a high, basically, where you look back just a little bit, you look back a little more, or you look back a little bit further. If you set it at the furthest setting, it kind of takes away some of your screen. So I usually run it at kind of the low setting, and then I'm going to say 20 feet deep, you can see, 15 or 20 feet behind your transducer. So you're looking behind the boat. Okay. So I'm going to stop for a second and just go over a little story. Fishing at Lake Shasta in the summertime, really a sunny day. I'm there sitting on a point using my live scope, and I'm looking at my live scope, and I have it set so I can see back, like 15 or 20 feet, and I see all these fish sitting underneath the boat. I'm like, man, are those bass? What's going on? And there was nothing there when I pulled up, and now all these fish are under there. So I lower the aqua view down, and I see a whole bunch of bass, and I was like, wow, that was really cool. But if I didn't have that reverse range set, if I had set to none or 0, I wouldn't have seen those fish. So I usually set it, so I can see back behind the boat a little bit. Ghost reject is another setting. And I set that on low. And what ghost is that, so with the live scope, you have basically 3 transducers on the front of your boat. Now, each transducer has about 100 little, I think they're called pixels in them, right, that send a signal out and take a signal back. That's how it can see. So now you're looking at 300 pixels versus a standard transducer has just a few. So you have so many more pieces sending signals out to get data back. That's how come you get so much data. Well, with 3 transducers at 3 different angles, sometimes you'll get like a little ghost image or, a little bit of like interference. So they have what's called ghost reject, and I usually run that on low. I don't mind if there's a little bit of ghost overlap on there, as long as I'm seeing the fish. Mm-hmm. So, with all the settings, the lesser you set these settings, the fewer things you're going to see. So I like to crank things up a little bit, and I don't care about a little fuzz or a little ghost imaging on there, as long as I can see the fish, see what the fish are doing. Right. So we also have TVG. So this is time variable gain. It's a kind of another gain part of it. And I run that off or low. And like I said, each body of water is different. You go to Clear Lake and there'll be all the algae on the water. Well, it's going to look different than this if you go to Lake Shasta in the wintertime when, the water's clear and cold and you can see a mile underwater. Right. It's going to look different. So but that's when you'll start adjusting the settings. Like when you go to Clear Lake, you may need to tone some things down so you're not seeing all the algae in there. So that's time variable gain, off or low. So basically, those are the settings. We have one other one, color scheme. Now, guys like different color schemes, and different color schemes show up differently on lakes. I found that amber seems to work the best for me on most lakes. I'm privileged. I have two 10-inch units on the front of my boat. So there's times where I'm going to run one color on the top and one color on the bottom and see if it really matters. And then I could switch and put the other stuff on the other unit.
Bass Angler Magazine is your guide to better bass fishing. Bass Angler is dedicated to helping you catch more and bigger bass no matter what time of year or where you live. This is not your ordinary fishing magazine. Every issue is jam-packed with 30-plus articles from the world's best bass anglers. Bass Angler Magazine is available at bassanglermag.com, Tackle Warehouse, Bass Pro Shops, Cabela's, Gander Mountain, Walmart, and better tackle shops everywhere. Bass Angler also makes a great gift for any angler. Get Bass Angler today and start catching more bass tomorrow. Visit bassanglermag.com or your favorite tackle shop. This is not your ordinary fishing magazine. bassanglermag.com.
Okay.
But generally, amber has seemed to work. So I'll go over the settings one more time, so in case you guys have missed it. Color scheme, I'm running amber. Gain, I run it on auto or around 70-ish. Color gain, 50 to 60%. Color limit, 40 to 60%. Reverse range, I run it about in the medium setting. Noise reject, I run it on low. Ghost reject, I run it on low. TVG on low. And that's it.
All right. I mean, that's
it.
That gives
for the
everybody
settings.
a good solid. That gives everybody a pretty good solid, setup to start with, and they can tweak a little bit as they need to or whatever.
Exactly. So, and I run the new Garmin, the LVS 34. The other one worked fine. This one is probably 25% clearer than the other one. So it's a substantial difference. If you have the other one and it's working good for you, you don't need to spend $1,000 to get the next one. Honestly, if you don't have one, get the 34.
Okay.
There's a lot of stories with. I remember when LiveScope first came out, it was a big giant brick. It looked like a brick on the front of your motor. And I remember I took it to Lake Shasta. I was fishing a tournament, and the LiveScope's going to make you fish differently. It just will. Once you start using it, you will fish different than you ever have in your whole life. I'm going down the bank at Lake Oroville, and my boat is in about 50 foot of water, pretty steep bank. I'm throwing a shaky head or a little Tritech or something up on the bank. And I just happened to swing my motor out because I have this new LiveScope thing on there, right? Panoptics, they called it then. And I swing it out and I see a fish out there in like 80 foot of water, about 15 foot down. I go, wow, look at that. There's a fish. And I could barely tell what a fish looked like at that point. It just looked like a little blob out there, but it was 15 foot deep. So I toss my little Tritech out there, and it's like I catch it. That's about a 2.1 pound fish. And if you ever fished Oroville, that's a pretty good one.
Right.
So that made the difference between me cashing a check in that tournament and not cashing a check. Simply because I swung the trolling motor out. I was out. I would never have cast it out there without it. I swung the trolling motor out, saw that fish, threw out, and caught it. There's a lot, so many things you could do. We talked about Clear Lake, looking up under the docks,
right?
Punching in the Delta. Now, if you're punching in, 2 or 3 foot of water, then you're really not going to see much. But there's times when you're going to punch and there's 6, 8, 10 foot of water underneath the mat, and you can actually watch your bait go through the mat, down through, and you can watch these fish follow your bait down. And so many times I have seen fish follow my bait down and not bite it. But what that's let me know is, hey, there's fish in there.
Right.
And so when I first started using this, I fished a federation tournament at Lake Conroe. Now, if you ever fished back east, or if guys are listening from back east, all those guys plant brush piles. You know, here in California, they haul you off, put you in jail for it. But, you know, back in Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, man, everybody's planting their own brush piles. Well, but with LiveScope, you can run that thing out 60, 70 feet, and you can scan, and you'll be able to see the brush pile that, you know, your buddy put out there before you get on top of it. Used to be you had to run over it with your, you know, with your trolling motor, and you went, oh, there's a brush pile there, and then you had to wait a few minutes till the fish, you know, relocated back to the brush pile. You had to back off and then go fish it. But this way, you can scan the brush pile, you can get a little bit closer, you can zoom in a little bit, and you can tell if there's fish in there, and then you can throw your bait, and you'll know when your bait even goes into that brush pile. So I just have to tell you, LiveScope has changed the way, definitely changed the way that I fished, and I think it's helped me a lot. I've probably made a lot of money on using the LiveScope.
I mean, that's a great, you know, tool right there, just to look at and say, like you said, you don't have to go over the structure anymore and see if there's something on it before you fish it, you know. And that was a big deal. You know, you'd be cruising along on the bank, like you said, go over a brush pile, go, oh, there was a brush pile there. Then you stop, maybe throw a marker out, turn around, wait 15, 20 minutes or whatever, and start fishing it as the fish come back and reset. This gives you that ability to see those before you ever disrupt that brush pile or stump or rock pile or whatever it is, you know.
Exactly. And you can tell if there's fish there.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember using it at Trinity, practicing for the Apex tournament. I look out and I see a stump, and I see a fish on the stump. And I go, oh, wow, that's cool. You know, because it's really cool. I mean, I feel like a little kid every time I'm using it. You know, you see fish and you throw out and the fish goes down and gets it. It's so fun. Kind of like a floating fly watching a bobber go down. But anyway, I look over and I throw my shaky head out. It goes down, hits the top of the stump, and the fish leaves. I'm like, oh, dang, fish left. But then all of a sudden, there was another one behind the stump that I didn't see, and it came out and bit it. So that was, you know, that was pretty cool. I'll tell you something else. Another use for this is that you can find fish. Now, when you're on a lake, it doesn't work so well for the Delta, or, you know, the real shallow places. But when you're on a lake, you can throw this thing out, right? You say you come up to a point, and you'll scan the point, and you won't see anything on the bottom. I mean, because I don't care what kind of sonar you're using. If them fish are glued to the bottom, which happens all the time, you can't see them. So there's been several times on a point. I remember this. I did use this at Gunnersville when I was there, you know, 3 or 4 weeks ago. Is that I would throw a deep diving crankbait over the top of that point, and I would crank that thing really fast. Well, what would happen is I'm watching the point on LiveScope, and all of a sudden I see these fish come up. They're not biting my bait, but I see them come up off the bottom, and now they showed themselves. Right, that I wouldn't have known they were there. You know, if I was just using regular sonar, I would go past the point, and I never got bit, so I wouldn't know. So I could back off those points and throw like a shaky head or a drop shot, and I can catch a few. What it did is let me know that there's some fish there. So many. This thing is just, you know, basically it's a life-changing device. Pretty cool.
You know. Len talked about a part of that, and I think in exactly what you were just talking about, it would make a real difference, especially on points. If you've got, you know, most of these motors nowadays all have spot lock, and you want to turn. Does the Garmin unit come with, or is there an accessory to where you can lock in your sonar on a spot? Let's say there's a stump on that point and you want to lock in on that, but you want to keep your trolling motor out there moving and everything else. Is there a way to set that up?
Well, there's a couple of devices out there. DD26 makes one. All Aboard Marine has one. I fished with Fred Rabanis a few weeks back, and he had an All Aboard Marine one.
Okay.
Where the cool thing with that is that it hooks to your trolling motor, right? And it's going with your trolling motor. Okay, but now you can pull this little lever up and disconnect it from your trolling motor, and then you use the foot pedals and you can move this thing back and forth. You know, and something else great about it, I don't have one. Thinking about getting one, but I don't have one currently. But the all aboard marine one lifts up where you can move this thing and get it out of the grass. Because granted, you know, sometimes when you're fishing the Delta or Clear Lake or, you know, Gunnersville or some of those places, Florida, where, you know, you can't have something extra hanging off your trolling motor. All it does is catch a bunch of grass. So when you're fishing shallow grass, you need to get this thing up off the bottom. So this unit does that. DD26 makes one that works independently of the trolling motor also. There's a couple aftermarket units out there that you can hook up and use it. You know, will Garmin come out with something? I don't, you know, they haven't told me yet, but they might.
Right. The other thing is, you know, when we first started here, we were talking about, you know, buying this, and you said, hey, you go out there, hook this thing up, and you go fishing. How difficult is it to really put these things together? I mean, as far as, do you recommend, you know, hey, take this to a shop to get it installed when you first do it? Is it something that you feel like the Garmin is so user friendly that you can just, you know, run it, get it hooked up and go?
You know, there's not very many wires. It's all plug-in. Everything plugs in except for the power accessories. Now you want to make sure you have good clean power going to, you know, the trolling motor. You know, you want to run a 10 gauge or, you know, maybe 12 gauge wire. You might get away with it, but probably 10 gauge wire, you know, from your battery up to, you know, your units would be best. You know, if you have that up there and you have some mechanical ability, you can hook it up yourself. It's not that difficult. You do want to make sure that the angles of your transducer are pointing forward. Okay. So there's one flat and then two angled transducers basically on the transducer itself. So you want to make sure that those are pointing forward. And you can't believe the number of guys that I've seen that have them on backwards and are like, I can see fish. I go, well, no, you can see fish till about 10 foot away because you're looking in reverse mode. Right. But anyway, just make sure that the transducer facing forward. There is instructions. There's all kinds of YouTube videos and instructions out there to help you out. So if you're mechanically inclined, you know, yeah, sure, you can do it yourself. If you're not, then, you know, maybe, you know, take it over to Gone Fishing Marine, CNC, you know, one of those guys and have them install it. Boat Masters in Livermore, also another great shop. So some good places out there to get your stuff installed.
Okay. You know, I think that's pretty much what we really need to cover on Forward Facing Sonar. I think unless there's something else you really think that people, you know, do, or, you know, that maybe they shouldn't or try, but you covered a lot of it. You know, so
yeah, I think we went over a lot. You know, I would say what it's not is you don't put it on your boat. You don't expect to put it on your boat and then go out and catch a bunch of fish. You know, you still have to fish for them. You still have to find them. What it'll do is it's a tool to help you. You know, it's just like if there's a topwater bite and you don't know how to throw a spook, then, you know, it's something you need to do. So, you know, once you get one, go out and work with it, take it out in the lake, you know, and check it out. Look at the trees, you know, look at some fish, see what's going on. You'll notice, you'll see a lot of fish, like bait look like a big blur of stuff down there. You can see bait, then you can see fish going through them, like crappie and bluegill, or they look like little dots, like little teeny dots on the screen, and usually they're stacked up. Bass are usually, I see them, they're close to the bottom, or if they're up off the bottom, they run in packs of, you know, 3 or 4. There's usually not like a school of hundreds of them. But you know, those are some things, you know, you'll find as you use them especially if you use the live scope and then you pair it with an aqua view. I mean, it'll just open your eyes because you can see, like I was talking about Lake Shasta, those fish under the boat. I go, wow, there's a bunch of fish under the boat. I didn't know they were bass, but once I lowered the aqua view down, I go, oh yeah, those are bass for sure. So those two things, and you can get an aqua view. They're fairly inexpensive now. Just a couple $100, you can get a pretty nice camera to lower down and look at them.
Yeah, we'll have to get into that a little bit too later. Maybe we'll do another show, talk to the Aquaview guys and maybe some of the tournament guys and see because I'd love to compare the two at this point. It's become this, over the years, they've always said, yeah, you can't use the Aquaviews. You can't use those in tournaments, get this, but now we've got this sonar that you can basically watch yourself fishing. So what's the difference? We should probably do a show on that and kind of
my argument. Exactly. I love the Aquaview and I wish I could use it on all the tournaments. Some of them you can, some of them you can't. So hopefully, we get to use it more because I find that thing is so fun to use.
Oh, absolutely. I've been out there when we've used it together and you're watching two grown men look like little kids watching a fish. There's one, and it's really not as easy to use that. And the Aquaview is a harder unit to use as far as using it to catch fish. It's not like it's not the easiest to point in one direction and then know where you're at and then throw your bait out and go, I don't even see my bait. Where is it? So. But that's another discussion.
It is, it's a little hard, they have one that has 4 screens that, I think you'd be able to see your bait no matter where it was. But yeah, it's a little difficult that way. But the Aquaview, it's pretty easy to lower it down and see something down there, which is pretty cool.
Right. So, besides this show right here, Mark, as we get to wrap this thing up, do you have any articles out there in the magazine right now talking about some of the forward-facing sonars or anything like that?
I don't have any specific ones about forward-facing sonar. I do a series called What's Down There, and I've been doing it for a year or so, where I'll compare sonar readings and Aquaview readings to what's down there, and then kind of give some ideas on how to catch those fish. So, if you pick up the last issue or two, I think you're going to learn a lot, not only from my stories, but all the other, great stories. The Bass Angler puts out, it's a different magazine than the other ones out there. There's a lot of great magazines out there, and we're just a little bit different. We interview the top pros and really get down to the nitty gritty to, find out what they're doing, what they're using, how they're catching them, and summarize that, put it into print and put it in the magazine and give it out to all our readers. So, help them catch a few more fish.
Yeah. We'll give them a little bit of, where to find it, how to get it and that sort of thing before we, and we'll.
Well, you can sign up at bassanglermag.com. You go on there, sign up. And, about once a month, I send a magazine out. We're a quarterly magazine, so we come out every season. But about every month, I run a list and I send them out to all the new people. You can also get it at Barnes & Noble, Borders, Gander Mountain, Bass Pro, Cabela's, Tackle Warehouse. You guys are probably always buying stuff from Tackle Warehouse. Just add it on to your order and the shipping's free that way. We're in like 4,000 newsstands across the country. So, I think even Safeway and Piggly Wiggly and Walmart and, a lot of places, they're pretty easy to find.
Okay.
But if you want to sign up, Bass Angler Mag's the place. And, we'd be happy to help you guys catch some more fish.
All right, Mark. Well, you know what? That's our time for tonight. So we'll wrap this one up. And thank you for coming on. That's the wealth of information as always on, some of the new electronics coming out. And, if you guys are having a hard time with yours, listen to this show over and over. It's always, you can just keep listening to this and maybe get some other tips and that sort of thing you missed the first time. So Yeah, thanks, Mark, for coming on tonight and giving up your time. I really appreciate it. I know you're out fishing quite a bit, so.
Be out there tomorrow. So.
So, all right. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for coming on. And everybody, I hope you enjoyed this show. I hope it gave you the information that you're looking for between Len Vinci and Mark Lassagne. I mean, they're two guys with, Len's a little bit more on the technical side of it as far as, he's the salesman and that sort of thing with Humminbird. And Mark is the on the water guy who's out there doing it and with Garmin. And, I think this was a great comparison and giving you a lot of information about how these things should work. So thanks for tuning in again, and we will talk to everybody and see you on the next show. Not sure who's going to be on there yet, so make sure you tune in and listen because I'm always trying to give you the best information we can. All right.
It'll be somebody good, I'm sure.